How can I scale myself? How can I be in more than one place at one time? I was literally asking myself this out loud, looking at my computer with multiple windows open, when I looked over at one of my son's best friends, who also happens to be his business partner. This brilliant business mind, half my age, might I add, was sitting on my couch. Maybe he knows, I thought. I closed my laptop, stood up, and immediately walked up to him. Let me ask you a question. How can I scale myself? How can I be in multiple places at once? I wasn't just asking a logistical question. I was asking a calling question. Because after 25 years of transforming lives, from building a behavioral health clinic, from a solo practice to leading systems at global levels, I knew my framework needed to reach far beyond my physical limitations. My son's business partner looked at me and said, "Have you heard of a digital mind?" That conversation didn't just change my business. It aligned with everything I believe about connection. Let me back this up. This question, how to scale myself, it wasn't born from ego or ambition. It came from something much deeper. I'm a biracial woman who spent her entire life being asked, "What are you?" That constant external pressure for racial explanation forced me to connect deeply with who I am. Every time someone needed to categorize me, I had to dig deeper into my own identity. That experience of constantly having to know myself in order to exist authentically in spaces not designed for me became the foundation of everything I teach. As an international psychologist, I have worked across 4 continents. As a behavioral health leader, I have built a clinic from a solo practice to 50 employees serving 3 locations. I've led high stakes, rapidly changing systems where there was no roadmaps, where traditional leadership advice failed, where the only way forward was through connection to self, to others, and to purpose. Through all of this, I discovered something. The leaders who thrive aren't the ones with the best strategies. They're the ones who know who they are, who lead from identity-aware connection rather than exhausting control. But here's the problem. Most leadership narratives are about success, strategy, ambition. Where are the stories about identity, about psychological truth, about leading when the system isn't designed for your success? It's the gap I feel. And staring at my overflowing calendar, I realized that gap was way bigger than my availability. My desire to scale my work isn't about being busy. It's about a purpose unfulfilled, a passion I feel compelled to share with others. I don't just support leadership challenges. I also support identity crisis, where people are trying to lead authentically in systems that demand they contort themselves to someone else's image of leadership. Not only do I have lived experience of these types of situations and issues, I have a framework to help support them. The connected leadership approach. Recognizing value, embodying grace, and conquering control. The receive, perceive, and respond methodology that I developed through decades of studying behavioral science. Yet, I could only be in one place at a time. I could only have one conversation at a time. And every no I say to a speaking engagement, every waitlist I have to create, every leader I can't reach feels like a betrayal of my purpose. Connection has been a thread and theme my entire life. How can I preach connection while being limited by disconnect? When my son's friend suggested a virtual mind, my resistance was immediate and visceral. "Have you heard of a digital mind?" he asked. "I have no clue what you're referring to," I said. But what I really was thinking is, you can't digitalize authenticity. You can't upload lived experience. And you definitely can't program the kind of connection that comes from understanding what it's like to be the only one in the room that looks like you. Then he showed me the platform. It's not AI pretending to be you. It's your actual thinking patterns, your questions, your frameworks. But I wasn't convinced. My work isn't just about frameworks. It's about the grace and the truth that comes from lived experience. It's about the resilience built from navigating systems that are challenged and not necessarily designed for success. It's about identity science meeting real world pressure. How do you upload the experience of being asked, what are you, your whole life? How do you program the understanding that comes from building something from nothing? How do you digitize the wisdom earned from leading through crisis where traditional leadership advice doesn't just fail, it harms? I spent some time in resistance, deep resistance. Then I did what I always do when I'm stuck. I applied my own framework to myself. Receive. What was I really receiving? An opportunity to scale not just my framework, but my mission to help leaders who feel overwhelmed, unseen, unsure how to rise in systems not designed for success. Perceive. What story was I telling myself? That digital meant disconnected? That technology couldn't carry the weight of lived experience? That my value was in being the sole source rather than the origin point? Then I remembered my avocado principle. My value, our value, doesn't diminish when more people can access it. If anything, it multiplies it. Respond. What would responding from my values look like? What would prioritizing connection over control mean here? That's when it hit me. My whole life, I had to translate my identity for others to understand. I had to build bridges between who I am and what systems expect. I had to create connection where none existed. Building a virtual mind was just another form of translation, another bridge, another way to create connection across barriers. This time, the barriers of time, geography, and availability. The decision to build my virtual mind became an act of alignment with everything I believe. If I believe in connection over control, I had to release control over how people access my wisdom. If I believe in authenticity, I had to trust my authentic approach could be captured and shared. If I believe in grace and truth, then I had to extend grace to technology and truth to my limitations. If I believe resilience comes from identity awareness, I had to help more leaders develop that awareness, even if I couldn't be there personally. Building my virtual mind isn't about replacing human connection. It's about multiplying it. It's about ensuring that leaders navigating identity pressures, systemic barriers, and psychological challenges can access support when they need it the most. Not when my calendar permits, but when crisis hits, when doubts creep in, and when you need to remember who you are beyond what systems tell you to be. So what makes my virtual mind different? It doesn't just know my frameworks. It carries my lived experience and how it approaches challenges. When someone comes to it, struggling with imposter syndrome, it doesn't just give generic advice. It asks, whose voice is telling you that you don't belong? What system values are you measuring yourself against? When someone's facing resistance to their trauma-informed approach, it explores how might their resistance be protecting them from their own unprocessed experiences. It recognizes what would it look like to lead from your authentic identity instead of the one that you think others need to see. These aren't just coaching questions. They're identity aware, psychologically informed, lived experience based questions. They come from decades of being the only, the first, and the different. From building in spaces that didn't expect me to succeed, from leading through crisis that required me to create a new map because the old ones didn't work. This virtual mind carries the wisdom of someone who's had to examine her identity every single day and who's turned that examination into a superpower for leadership transformation. That conversation with my son's friend didn't just introduce me to technology. It showed me how to scale my deepest purpose, creating connection for leaders who've been told they have to choose between authenticity and success. I plan to share how I'm training my virtual mind not just to carry out what I know, but who I am and why it matters. I want to ask you what I ask all my clients. What do you want more of? And what are you willing to do to get it? If your answer involves leading more authentically, connecting more deeply, or rising without losing yourself, my virtual mind is waiting at the link below, because your 2 a.m. identity crisis deserves the same support as your 2 p.m. strategy session.